We're motivated by in coming here today. It is, as you mentioned, Kira, a little bit of a home for me. I've lived here for 3 years, a handful of years ago, and I'm smiling because it's almost one of those things that has become something that you laugh about in the Twin Cities, where everyone knows each other around here, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. Today, it's a good thing.
Indeed. Jack, teachers, staff, they're all being hailed as heroes. It's pretty amazing how the kids described all of them jumping into action, covering the students, getting them down on the ground, rushing them into places they felt they would be safe. I mean, this could have been a lot worse if you think about it. And the training, I mean, the fact that that just kicked in and they just immediately knew what to do.
Absolutely, Kira. It's just astonishing acts of heroism and sacrifice that these teachers and people who work there, protecting these children, often with their own bodies. It's quite extraordinary that more people weren't injured, especially given the nature of the firearms that were used, a high-powered rifle, that there was a shotgun, a handgun at close range, that the considerable damage was done, but it's astonishing that more damage wasn't done. Frankly, it's a sad commentary on where we are today. It seems that for really any public place, whether you're in a church or movie theater, these things are happening so often that people are almost conditioned to react and think about that worst possible scenario in their minds.
Christian, Jack, appreciate you both. It looks like the press conference is about to get underway. We're going to hear, it looks like, from the chief and others. Are we going to go ahead and take this live and listen in? Okay, let's go ahead and listen in, see what Chief O'Hara has to say.
That even in the face of evil, the Minneapolis Police Department and all of our law enforcement partners collectively stand together with you. Stand together with you. We stand with our families that have been affected by this senseless violence, as well as with the parish community. We will continue to be here for all of you. The men and women of the Minneapolis Police Department who responded yesterday did not hesitate. At 8:27 a.m., 911 began to receive initial calls of shots being fired. By 8:31, a Minneapolis police officer in a regular uniform with no helmet, no SWAT gear, ran into the church and was met by a parishioner who directed him towards where the gunman had been. The parishioner later told me that was the first time that he, the children, and others there had any sense that they might be safe and survive. The members that responded yesterday exemplified the motto that is on the Minneapolis Police Squad cars: to protect with courage and to serve with compassion. All of our law enforcement partners, first responders, and many children, members of the school staff, and parishioners of Annunciation Catholic Church all showed incredible courage yesterday in the face of unspeakable horror. As the investigation continues, we will continue working alongside our county, state, and federal law enforcement partners as we continue to be critical as we piece together exactly what happened. At this time, we have identified a total of 20 victims that had injuries resulting from gunfire, including the 8- and 10-year-old who were killed yesterday. 15 of the injured are children between the ages of 6 and 15. 3 of those injured are adults in their 80s. Those who remain hospitalized need all of our support as we continue to pray for a speedy recovery for all of our victims. During the processing of the scene at Annunciation Church yesterday, 3 shotgun shells were recovered, along with approximately 116 rifle rounds. 1 live round was recovered from a handgun that appears to have malfunctioned as the shooter attempted to use it and became stuck in the chamber. There were 4 search warrants that were executed yesterday. One at the church, the others were executed at residences believed to be associated with the shooter. One of those residences was in the city of Minneapolis, a second one was in Richfield, and a third one was in St. Louis Park, which are both bordering municipalities. Additional evidence was recovered as a result of these warrants. Literally hundreds of pieces of evidence have been recovered thus far, which include electronic devices that will be further searched and processed. It now becomes our job collectively with all of law enforcement to process that evidence. And so this investigation will continue, and we will follow all of the evidence to its logical conclusion. I am aware, however, that this may not ultimately provide the answers that our public is looking for. When something terrible happens, the public expects law enforcement to provide some explanation for what happened. But the reality is, this is an unthinkable, completely senseless act. Violence perpetrated against children worshiping at Mass. And no investigation, no evidence will ever be able to make sense of such an unthinkable tragedy. That being said, we will do our best to determine and identify a specific motive. What we have seen so far is this is an individual who, unfortunately, like so many other mass shooters that we have seen in this country too often and around the world, had some deranged fascination with previous mass shootings and very disturbing writings that demonstrate hatred towards many different individuals and different groups of people. And he fantasized about the plans of other mass shooters. Unfortunately, again, this has become all too common in our society. That being said, we know ultimately the purpose of the shooter's actions was to obtain notoriety for the shooter themselves. That being said, I have only said the name of this shooter once, and I'm asking members of the media to stop saying the shooter's name. That was the whole purpose of why he did this heinous act, to obtain that notoriety for themselves. As schools in our city are beginning to start this week and next, we are working with all of our law enforcement partners, county sheriffs, state troopers, and surrounding municipalities that are helping the city of Minneapolis as we step up police presence both in and around schools and around all of our houses of worship in the city. Many of our law enforcement partners are also supplementing patrols, and we could not be more grateful. This has truly been a collective effort in partnership with our community. We also must say that we will be forever in debt to all of the doctors, nurses, and paramedics who responded, who are caring for these victims in this incident. I cannot tell you how incredibly grateful we are for all of the love and support that has been pouring in from all around the country, both for the first responders who initially responded, entered that church, and dealt with the unthinkable, and for all of the victims and families that have received that love and support as well. The Minneapolis Police Department and our community have a long road ahead of us to heal, and we need everyone to continuing to show their support after the cameras once again leave this city. I'd like to invite up the Acting United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota, Joe Thompson.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Thompson. I'm the Acting United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota. Yesterday, Minnesota was attacked. It was an attack, first and foremost, on our children and our families, an attack at a school and in a place of worship. It was also an attack on our city, our state, and our country. The U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, ATF, and other federal law enforcement are working with state and local partners to investigate this heinous act. Our investigation is twofold. First, we are seeking to confirm what we believe to be true which is that the shooter acted alone and that no one else was involved, that the threat died with the shooter yesterday. We believe that to be true, but we'll leave no stone unturned to ensure the safety of our community. Second, we are investigating the motive, why and how this happened. The shooter left behind hundreds of pages of writings that describe the shooter's plan, writings that describe the shooter's mental state, and more than anything, writings that describe the shooter's hate, pure, indiscriminate hate. The shooter expressed hate towards almost every group imaginable. The shooter expressed hate towards black people. The shooter expressed hate towards Mexican people. The shooter expressed hate towards Christian people. The shooter expressed hate towards Jewish people. In short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us. The shooter's heart was full of hate. There appears to be only one group that the shooter didn't hate, one group of people who the shooter admired. The group were the school shooters and mass murderers that are notorious in this country. The shooter idolized some of the most notorious school shooters and mass murderers in our country's history. I won't name them, just like I won't name the shooter. They don't deserve to have their names remembered. As I said, the shooter left behind hundreds of pages of writings. There is a lot to digest, and we'll know more in the coming days and weeks as we've had an opportunity to go through them. But reading them, one thing is clear, and it's going to be hard to hear, but it's important to the question of why this happened. More than anything, the shooter wanted to kill children, defenseless children. The shooter was obsessed with the idea of killing children. The shooter saw the attack as a way to target our most vulnerable among us while they were at their most vulnerable at school and at church. I won't dignify the shooter's words by repeating them. They are horrific and vile. But in short, the shooter wanted to watch children suffer. Yesterday was a tragedy for this city and our state. My heart goes out to the entire Annunciation community. Their loss is unimaginable. I want the state of Minnesota to know that when a tragedy like this occurs, we all stand together. Federal, state, and local law enforcement work together side by side. The FBI, the ATF, the BCA, Minneapolis Police Department, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, including their victim advocates who have been working with the families yesterday and today. The list goes on. This has been a tough summer for Minnesota, but I take heart knowing that we all stand together in confronting this evil. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Chief O'Hara.
You have been listening to officials there in Minneapolis give an update, a press conference on what happened, that tragic scene that occurred and that shooting in Minneapolis. Officials say that a total of 20 victims, including an 8- and 10-year-old, were killed. 15 children were among those who were injured, ranging from the ages of 6 to 15. Officials also believe that the suspect acted alone. You heard the police chief there call this an unthinkable tragedy involving violence against children, saying no amount of evidence will ever be able to make sense of this. So let's get right to ABC's Alex Perez there in Minneapolis. Alex, you have been talking to people in this community. You also spoke to the police chief earlier today.
Yeah, Rachel, this continues to be a real-life nightmare for everyone in this community, still trying to make sense of all this. I want you to quickly take a look behind me here. You can see we're right outside the church, and you can see there's a number of people. There's been a steady stream of people all day stopping by here, laying flowers, quietly praying, really leaving their last respects to those people who lost their lives inside that church, people who wanted to come here this church means a lot to so many in this community, so it's become a point where so many have come to gather to try to console each other. Now, that update, Rachel, that we got from law enforcement just a short time ago, that's the first significant update we've seen today from authorities. And as you said, we heard the police chief there call this an unthinkable, completely senseless act. The police chief also said that they have collected an enormous amount of evidence, hundreds of documents, he said, several videos and images, and also electronic devices. They say they are sifting through all of that evidence with their federal partners as they try to piece together how exactly we got to this point, Rachel. And another thing that the police chief made clear here is that while they have not been able to pinpoint a specific motive, why this church, why this location, why that time, they have been able to learn, sifting through that evidence, that this shooter harbored hate towards a number of groups. He was filled with hate. The shooter was filled with hate, is what the police chief told me when I talked to him just a short time ago before this press conference. Rachel, this continues to be a difficult time here. We got some answers from authorities here, but I don't think they're all the answers that this community would want. It's going to be a while before things ever start to feel like normal here, Rachel.
Yeah, officials seem to acknowledge that the community may not be satisfied, but what they may hear as they continue to mourn this tragedy. All right, Alex, thank you. I want to bring now ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky. And Aaron, as we were sitting here, we are hearing from Governor Tim Walz. He's saying that he's going to be deploying state law enforcement personnel to support public safety efforts around the schools. There were a lot of questions going into this press briefing on a possible motive, more on this suspected shooter as well. And officials there detailing more of what they've recovered now.
They say they've recovered hundreds of pieces of evidence. They conducted searches at 3 residents in and around Minneapolis associated with the shooter. They also went through the church. They found more than 116 different kinds of shell casings that suggests a high-powered rifle in particular used in the assault, mainly from the outside, shooting through the stained glass windows to the terrified children and adults inside. The authorities have also recovered electronic devices they're going through and additional writings that they say point to someone who appeared to hate all of us, as the acting U.S. attorney said. He expressed hatred toward black people, Mexican people, Christian people, Jewish people. The only people the shooter seemed to admire were other mass shooters and appeared to want to kill children in particular.
And on the motive, Aaron?
The motive appears to be, if they can find one at all, a goal to target children. There was, the federal prosecutor said, an obsession in those writings that the shooter expressed. He wanted to watch children suffer.
All right, Aaron Katersky here at the desk with us. Aaron, thank you. I want to turn now to ABC's Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas. And Pierre, we are hearing from the FBI director calling this a barbaric attack and an act of domestic terrorism.
He is, in fact, calling it an act of domestic terrorism. And he specifically is also pointing out that they found evidence that the shooter hated Jewish people as well, wrote about Israel having to fall, free Palestine. But I have to tell you, Rachel, in 20+ years of covering these kinds of incidents, this is one of the more stark press conferences I've seen. To hear that acting U.S. attorney talk about the motivation. Now, there's a mountain of evidence they're still going through, but they have made some very clear, definitive conclusions that this was based on hate toward various groups and, as Aaron said, a very specific and precise desire to kill children and to watch them suffer.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. I want to go to the White House now and bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, we know that the president spoke with the governor of Minnesota, Governor Walz, and the White House today pressed on what, if anything, the president is willing to do on gun safety.
Yeah, and Rachel, we still haven't heard directly from the president himself since shortly after news of this shooting broke yesterday, when he took to social media to send his prayers to the victims and note that he was monitoring this situation. He did, of course, then speak shortly after with the governor, and the White House was pressed today. You know, what exactly does this administration plan to do to prevent this epidemic, to stop future tragedies like this from occurring? The White House press secretary asked directly about mental health issues, but she sidestepped any specifics. saying only that they are helping the people of Minnesota right now. That is where their focus is, and noting this is an ongoing investigation. But interestingly, moments ago, the vice president speaking out for the first time on camera about this, and he did note that it is time for us to start asking some very hard questions about the root causes of this violence, again citing what he believes is a mental health crisis in this country, Rachel.
And officials in Minneapolis, they are pleading for change, right? Mary Bruce at the White House for us. Mary, thank you. Officials do say it will be a long road ahead for that community. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and on abcnews.com. I'll be back right here with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm Rachel Scott in New York. Have a good day.
This has been a special report.
Rachel, thanks so much. I want to take you right back into that press conference now with Minneapolis Police Chief O'Hara, giving more details about the mass shooting and also taking reporters' questions.
We can confirm that, yes.
I know you got arrested and the FBI spokesperson talked about it too. Had any law enforcement you found made contact with the shooter's family previously to what happened?
I can try. For everybody, I'm Drew Evans, Superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. It depends on specifically what you're asking. We're aware of some reports in the past. We are gathering those reports now. There will be additional information that we'll be able to share down the line. But as the chief noted, and we think what is important in this and related to the question, this individual was not arrested for anything that would prohibit them from being able to purchase a firearm. There is not substantive police contact with this individual that would have raised concern to the level that would lead us to believe this sort of a situation would happen today. The social media, in terms of your question for that, just to be clear, the level set for everybody, there is a specific criteria in terms of how an individual can purchase a firearm legally in Minnesota. If those posts and information, I'll share it for everybody that we want to know going forward, this obviously is a terrible tragedy. We need the help of the public and everybody else. If there's concerning social media behavior by anybody, or that there's concern in their community, that they are contacting their law enforcement so that we can adequately address that in the process. That did not happen in this case.
So in terms of the evidence found with the search warrants, were you able to recover additional guns, and if so, were those registered and also legally purchased?
So the question was, in regard to the search warrant, were additional weapons recovered? The answer is no. Only the 3 weapons that were recovered at the scene, a 5.56 millimeter rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, and all 3 were used during this incident.
Chief, any history of gun training? Because the shooter seemed fairly accurate.
We're not aware of, at this time, any history of gun training.
In the evidence that you have recovered, has the shooter expressed any grievance against that particular church?
No, we haven't. No. So the question was any specific grievance against the church. We mentioned there is a connection to the parish, a connection to the school, but we have not identified a triggering event or a specific grievance against the church that you could point to say this is the reason for why this happened.
Chief, I just want to clarify something you said. You said the shooter attended Mass in the weeks before the shooting.
I did not say that. So the question was, did the shooter attend Mass in the weeks before? We know that previously the shooter had attended that parish and had attended that school when they were younger.
Is there anything, any evidence that this person was radicalized or part of some online groups or anything like that that would have inspired this behavior?
No. So the question was if the individual was radicalized, I guess, for a specific cause or a part of some online groups. And the answer is no. We have not found evidence of that, other than, again, just this fascination in general with many, many different previous mass shootings, mainly in this country, but also some from around the world.
Chief, any evidence to indicate why this particular church, just to kind of follow up on what I was asked, why this particular church was chosen as the somewhere else?
So Matt's question is the question, why this particular church? And other than the obvious, which we have said, the connection to being from that church, being from that school, mom having worked there, we have not found a specific trigger for why to target the children at this church.
On that note, though, did the shooter seem aware that there was going to be this mass at this time, that the kids would be there at that time?
So
other than the obvious that they showed up and shot.
Yeah. So the question was, did the shooter be aware? Was the shooter aware of this mass at this church? The answer would be yes. This was a daily mass but this was special in that the children were attending to celebrate the first week of school, the beginning of a new school year.
Chief, are you able to give us an update? I know we heard this from HCMC this morning on the injuries. Who's hospitalized, how many, the severity, and you did mention that you expect some kids to be released.
So the question was total number of victims who remain hospitalized. I do not have information that would have to come specifically from the individual hospitals. Again, I know that some victims have been released, and I believe HCMC mentioned at their press conference earlier that they anticipate a couple more may be released today. But I know both at HCMC as well as Children's Hospital that there remain patients who are in critical condition.
You've had more than 24 hours to kind of absorb this and kind of process this. Your thoughts on this?
So the question was, over the last 24 hours, for my thoughts on where we are and moving forward. I think we had dozens of police officers that responded, that entered there. I shared a story that one parishioner had shared with me of the relief they had seeing an officer running in towards the danger. And I know from dozens of officers who did respond that ran into the church and saw the unthinkable with all of these children so seriously injured, and other children that had blood on them, from not because they were injured, but because of blood that was shared from other kids. And just how confusing it was for the officers, because no one knew if there was specifically just one shooter, if there were perhaps improvised devices that were there to go off. So I think the officers, and that were then joined by state troopers and county sheriff's deputies and all of federal law enforcement officers and others that responded very, very quickly, and I just think did an incredible job at trying to ensure that the threat was eliminated, there were no additional threats, but also trying to triage as quickly as possible and get the injured to the hospital. And I think EMS, all the first responders, did an amazing job. And I think going forward, we're going to learn countless stories about many children and the heroic acts that children there did, as well as staff members and other parishioners. So I know this is, incredibly horrific and just an unthinkable situation, but despite all of that, I think there's going to be countless lessons of bravery from young children all the way up to elders in our community.
All right, we'll take one more, perhaps from somebody who's not yet had a chance.
Chief, have you spoken? Have you guys spoken with the shooter's parents, and have they said anything about past mental health history? And do you guys, as law enforcement, believe there might have been any red flags that might have been missed?
Okay. So the question was, have we spoken to the shooter's parents, and if there were any red flags that may have been missed? I know there were dozens of interviews that have been conducted with relatives, friends, associates of the shooter, as well as people, obviously individuals, witnesses that were present at the scene yesterday. I know we have not been successful in talking to the shooter's mother yet at this time, but there continue to be efforts made to get that done.
But you have talked to the father?
I cannot confirm that. I don't know. There's been. You have. Okay.
Did he live alone, or did he live with his father?
Well, the question was, did he live alone or live with his father? There's 3 residences that are associated with this individual. I can't verify right now which residence he was staying at immediately prior to the shooting, but that's obviously something that will come out with the investigation as it continues.
Just out of curiosity, what was your question?
How long the shooter attended the school for?
I don't know. Yeah. So the question was, how long did the shooter attend?
There's no high school there. So.
Okay. But I don't know the period of time exactly.
Is there surveillance video available? Not that we want to see it, but that you can review to know like how long he was shooting and how he snuck up.
Yep. So the question was, is there surveillance video? And the answer is yes, there's surveillance video at the church. That's how we know for sure he did not enter and did not fire at all from inside the church.
And do you know how long the shooting took place?
We will know that for sure. The question was, how long did the shooting take place? So the first call to 911 was...
I just mean like the shots being fired for how many seconds or minutes? Yeah.
Yes, we will be able to figure that out. We will be able to pinpoint that.
Yes. Thanks so much for your time today. We are quite hot. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
We got a lot more yet to get done today. So I appreciate, again, your partnership in helping us get these messages out. Thank you.
Well, we're learning a lot more now as the police chief there in Minneapolis, along with the acting U.S. attorney and other investigators, joined in on that press conference, taking a lot of questions from reporters. Let's go ahead and bring in our Christian Cordero, who's there in Minneapolis, has been covering the story for us since early this morning. So, Christian, I took a number of notes. We learned a lot more about the writings of this shooter. Bottom line, the acting U.S. attorney just saying that this shooter was full of hate and wrote about how he wanted to kill defenseless children and wanted to see them suffer. So we're learning a lot about the writings, if you don't mind expanding on that. And then also I thought it was really interesting that they say they have contacted the shooter's mother, but still haven't talked to her. A lot of questions surrounding the shooter's parents, where he was living, 3 residents tied to him. They're still working all that out. So tell me your thoughts. What stood out to you?
Well, the overwhelming amount of evidence, Kira, that they have now, despite not having one really key piece of evidence, as they've articulated, which is an interview with the shooter's mother. The shooter's mother, we've learned, worked at this school as recently as 2021. And so there's a lot to process about perhaps why she's not speaking or not feels like she's ready to. So, of course, there are still a lot of unanswered questions. But what we do know, according to investigators, is that they've recovered hundreds of documents, writings, videos, and devices, of course. You know, the shooter had family in the area, so there have been multiple residences that have been visited by law enforcement, weapons that have been recovered as well. They recovered 3 weapons here at the school itself yesterday. But certainly a lot of questions, Kira. And you know, what we do understand, too, is that the shooter acted alone, which was one of the really early on questions. And when it comes to the why that a lot of people want to know, it will take time to really understand, you know, what was all behind this. But the reality is what you've expressed is essentially what officials are working with right now, was that this was someone who was harboring hate for a lot of different types of people and for children specifically. That answers some of it, but not all of it, certainly.
Yes, still many more questions, and I know there's a lot of people eager to talk to the shooter's parents to hopefully learn more about just what his life has been like, and if, of course, Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice correspondent, if this shooter, you know, gave any signs, if the family knew anything about what he was thinking or planning or putting out on the internet. I mean, if you look at all the details, Pierre, from the acting U.S. attorney within these writings, it's just gut-wrenching and sad and sick what we are learning.
It was jaw-droppingly awful to hear what the U.S. attorney described, to be frank with you. We have the FBI director today, Kash Patel, stating that the evidence thus far demonstrates that this was an act of domestic terrorism fueled by hate. And then the U.S. attorney, acting U.S. attorney, took it a step further. He said specifically, there's evidence in the writings and videos and other things that they found that he hated black people, he hated Mexican people, he hated Christians, quote, he hated all of us. But then the turn to what seems to be the thing that the U.S. attorney wanted to highlight most of all, that there was a fixation on killing children and that he wanted the children to suffer. So, again, we learned a great deal today about why this likely happened. Now, as you said, Kira, the issue is going to be, given this wealth of material that they have uncovered, you know, Was anyone else in a position to know about it? Now, the early answer seems to be that the threat ended with this young man, this person, I should say, who did all this killing, according to police. That is the issue, but there's a lot more to be known about whether there were missed signals, red flags that someone would have noticed, especially when the person recently went and bought the firearms. Did anyone know that the subject went and bought these firearms? Did anyone know that? And did the people that saw or knew that these purchases were made, were they aware of all these different suicidal and homicidal ideations that this person clearly had? So again, today we learned an incredible amount of detail about what investigators are pouring through, and they have a lot more work to do because they have devices that they're now exploiting, and they're reading through all these writings. Again, just gut-wrenching what we heard today, Kira.
And Pierre, there was a moment, too, and nobody really expanded on it during the press conference, but look, this is something you've been covering for years now, and that's gun violence in America. And that is his social media behavior and the connection between that and the ability to buy guns. There was one reporter trying to get to that issue of you know, an alert system, some sort of way that this type of behavior online could be connected to somehow to gun shops or places that sell weapons, and kind of create a system to prevent somebody like this shooter to be able to just walk into a shop and buy whatever they want and then shoot up, you know, a mass, because something has to happen. Clearly, the discussion is going to build around this, because how many times have we talked about recently that there were things online, there were warning signs, and still these shooters are able to go in and purchase guns legally?
Well, Kira, that's the unknown. Now we know that the YouTube video was posted, apparently designed, my sources believe, to come to fruition or to become known after this took place, because there's a 4-page letter in which the shooter is discussing with the family all these desires, and that something awful is about to happen and that they're going to be impacted by it. So we know that. What we don't yet know is this other material that they seem to have found. Was this posted anywhere when anyone could see it? Were these writings stored in a place that no one could see it? We just don't know those answers yet in terms of if anyone had access to this material, because, Kira, that's the key. Someone outside of him who is civic-minded and concerned about public safety would have had to see this and then notify law enforcement, because he had no criminal record to speak of. So again, the issue will come down to, was there anyone in his inner circle that had any clue that he had this darkness inside of him, and then who was aware that he bought the firearms? Right.
Was he being treated? Was he getting help? I mean, there's so many answers we want to hear from the parents, of course, as well. Pierre, appreciate your insight, the way that, you know, you're helping me parse through this conversation with so many questions that remain. Let's get to our Chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. So, Mary, you know, we heard from the president yesterday when all of this happened. Of course, we're hearing from the FBI, Kash Patel, talking about treating this as an act of terrorism. We're learning more details about these writings. Just sickening what we're learning. Still waiting to hear what the parents will tell authorities, where exactly he was living. What's the White House? What's the stance today? What happened in the briefing? What's the president thinking about how to move forward after this?
Yeah, and so much of the conversation here has been, what does come next? We still have not heard directly from the president since he took to social media shortly after news of this shooting broke, simply to say that, he was monitoring and being updated on the situation and sending his prayers to the victims and all involved. We are now hearing today from the vice president, J.D. Vance, who was giving a speech a short while ago and commented briefly on the shooting, of course, praising the heroism of the first responders and members of the community who leapt into action. And looking ahead, while he did stress that, there's going to be time for politics, he did note, and I quote here, "I think it's time for us to start asking some very hard questions about the root causes of this violence," pointing to what he described as a mental health crisis in the United States of America. And he also noted the statement last night from the First Lady, Melania Trump, on social media, saying that this mass killing, quote, "illuminates the need for preemptive intervention in identifying potential school shooters." She went on to say that it's crucial we look into behavioral threat assessments across all levels of society. And here at the White House briefing, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, was pressed several times about, what concrete steps is this administration going to take to try and prevent these kinds of horrific events from happening, to stop this epidemic of shootings in this country. And she was asked specifically about mental health and what the administration plans to do. And she sidestepped specifics, saying only that this is an ongoing investigation, that they are, focused on helping the people of Minnesota. And again, thanking the first responders and sending prayers and thoughts to this community, which is just suffering this unspeakable, horrific tragedy. But there are a lot of questions about, what does come next, as there always are after these kinds of events in this country. What, if anything, is Washington going to do? Where will the president sort of put his political weight and heft to try and do something to address this? Certainly mental health seems to be an issue that the administration is pointing to, but the specifics are light, and we just don't know, what, if anything, the president is going to be calling for.
Yeah, we want to know a lot more, of course. And guns and mental health, those are the top two topics. Mary Bruce, thank you so much. And what Mary was talking about, perfect segue to my next guest, emergency psychiatrist and expert on mental illness, wellness, and also public health. I want to bring Dr. Joa Smalls-Manti into the conversation. Doc, good to see you. You've been listening to all of this. You were listening to the press conference and all the details laid out about these writings, and just what I was talking to Mary and Pierre and Christian about with regard to mental health and just the healing process. So many things to talk about with your expertise. Let me just start with, from what you've heard so far, your thoughts.
I have to say this is an unspeakable tragedy, something that is becoming more common, and it is very, very devastating to see it happen again. I know there are a lot of concerns about what is the cause, how could somebody do this, and it is often conflated with there must be something wrong with the person, and there is something wrong. There is hate, but I also think that we cannot scapegoat a mental health issue as being the reason and try to say, all right, we have to just make sure someone has enough therapy and it will be okay. Even if there is a mental health issue that does cause someone to want to do things, that can happen. What we do in our mental health field is limit people's access to tools or means that might prevent them from enacting any tragedy. Sometimes they're kept in a hospital. You restrict the guns that they're able to get. There are a lot of things that we are not even allowed to buy as civilians because we deem it too dangerous to have in society in case somebody wants to do something nefarious. So I do really want to emphasize that we cannot only say it's a mental health issue that will be the only thing that we need to address. We also have to deal with the weapons that are causing this heinous act over and over and over again.
Of course, because you address the mental health issue. And if somebody is not mentally healthy and it's easy to go buy guns and buy guns legally, you've got a big problem. It is a much larger discussion. But I do, clearly we could talk about this shooter, his upbringing, his mental health. But if we could just take a moment to talk about these kids that experience this. So talk about devastating, not just for the kids, but for the parents, and just I know you've been watching the interviews. I've been watching the interviews of these young kids coming forward and talking about this and talking so bravely and so directly and saying things like, I'm just so glad to be next to my mom. I know she was scared and I just had to do what I had to do. Another little boy said, yeah, my teacher just jumped on top and held on to me and put me flat on the ground. Listening to them, detail their survival stories is quite remarkable. But if you were to sit in a room with these survivors, with these parents, what would be the first thing that you would say? Because a lot of this stuff will not manifest sometimes till a lot later.
The first thing I would say to a child is, how do you feel? Whenever I talk to anyone, I'm checking in with them. What are they experiencing? What are they going through? So for a child, I'm going to ask them, what do you understand about what happened to this in this event? Because I want to know, do they know about it? They definitely do. Their teachers might be talking about it. Their school might be talking about it and talking about more preparations that they're making. And then if there are any misconceptions that they have, you want to clear that up, make sure that the details are cleared for them. Then they might express some of their feelings, whether it be anxiety, fear, even going back to school. And as a parent, I would have that fear for my child too. And it's okay for you to express that to your child, what your concerns are. But we want to reassure our children that we are taking all the measures possible as a school system to ensure that they're safe. And some of those measures that are now routine for children are active shooter drills, are lockdown drills. That's very sad that they have to do that. But there are also other things. Some school districts are now restricting phones, but if you have it, that's something that you can have. And I also want to emphasize to children that there are adults in place that are there to help you, to protect you, whether they're safety officers, your teachers are there to help. But one thing that we should also tell children is, if you start to hear something about another classmate that is thinking about these things, mentioning this, talking about it in a good way, we can see with this shooter, he idolized past shooters. Tell an adult so that we can now identify that person and take protective measures for everybody. And then finally, I want to emphasize is we have to think about how much exposure children are having to the news, how much exposure you're having to the news. The news is very important and we have to be informed, but not to have that happen too much, because then it can become traumatic with that constant exposure. And then if you start to notice signs of trauma like anxiety, fear, not wanting to go to school, maybe not participate in activities, then you have to really think about, maybe I need additional support for the child.
Dr. Adjoa Smalls-Manty, thank you so much. And our thanks to Christian Cordero, Pierre Thomas, Mary Bruce. Thank all of you. Straight ahead, eliminating FEMA. It's on the table. We'll tell you why next.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our Combat Operations Center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions.
Operational nuclear reactor.
So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it.
Not a tear in it.
How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love this.
Great work.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
Appreciate you.
Thank you. David, good to meet you.
Ismail?
David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
I watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Are you ready